The shuttle came down through pale clouds and settled on the clearing like a careful bird. The ground beneath it was soft and blue-gray, covered with plants that folded inward when the wind passed. Human boots had never touched this place before today. Evan Cole stepped down the ramp with his rifle lowered and his helmet visor open. He was not here to fight. He was here because humans wanted peace, and because he had survived enough battles to know when not to start one. Around him, the world felt quiet but alert, like it was watching him back. Tall stone shapes rose in the distance. They were not buildings, not fully. They looked grown rather than built, curved and smooth, marked with lines that glowed faintly like veins of light. This was one of the outer settlements of the Varellan people, a species humanity had only just contacted. Burst signals, careful talks, no weapons raised so far. Evan's team followed behind him. 3 scientists, 1 translator drone, and a second soldier. Orders were simple. Land, observe, make friendly contact, leave. Nothing about the day suggested it would change his life. The Varellans appeared quietly, stepping from behind the stone growths. They were taller than humans, slimmer, with skin that shifted colors softly depending on light and mood. Their eyes were large and dark, reflective like still water. They wore layered garments that wrapped around their bodies in elegant folds. They watched Evan closely. He raised his empty hands slowly, just like he had practiced. "I come in peace," he said. The translator drone hummed, then repeated the words in a musical flowing version of the Varellan language. The tension eased just a little. Talks went well at first, simple exchanges. Curiosity, careful gestures. The Varellans were cautious but polite. They offered water-like drink that tasted faintly sweet. Evan's scientists took notes, wide-eyed. Then the ground trembled. At first it felt like distant thunder. Then the stone growths began to vibrate. The Varellans stiffened, their colors shifting sharply toward warning tones. One of them spoke fast. The translator struggled to keep up. "Predators," the drone finally said. "Large, territorial, drawn by noise." The air filled with a deep, echoing sound. Not a roar exactly, more like the grinding of stone. Evan reacted instantly. "Evac protocol," he ordered. "Move, now." The Virellans scattered, moving with practiced speed toward narrow openings in the stone growths. The humans followed, boots pounding, hearts racing. One of the scientists stumbled, and Evan grabbed her arm, pulling her forward. The sound grew louder. Something massive moved through the trees beyond the clearing. The nearest shelter entrance was small, barely wide enough for a human in armor. Evan pushed the last scientist inside, then turned back. A Varellan woman lay on the ground several meters away. She was injured, one leg twisted beneath her, her skin flickering with pain color. She tried to rise and failed. The predator's shadow crossed the trees. Evan didn't think. He ran. He reached her just as the ground shook again. He lifted her carefully. She was lighter than she looked, and turned toward the nearest opening. It was not the same shelter as the others. It was smaller. Private. He ducked inside just as something huge crashed past the entrance, claws tearing into stone. The opening sealed behind them with a smooth, organic motion, plunging the space into dim light. Only then did Evan realize where he was. The shelter was not a bunker or public hall. It was a personal space, warm and softly lit, with delicate markings along the walls. And the Varellan woman in his arms was not wearing the layered garments of the others. She froze. Evan froze harder. He turned his head away instantly, lowering her onto a cushioned surface without looking. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, voice tight. "I didn't know." "I'm not looking. I swear." Silence filled the space, broken only by distant impacts as the predator moved away. The Varellan woman stared at him, her skin flashing through rapid colors. Shock, fear, something deeper. "You saw," she said quietly, the translator drone hovering near the entrance picking up her voice. Evan kept his eyes on the wall. Only enough to save you, he replied. I meant no harm. She said nothing more. When the danger passed, the shelter opened again. Other Varellans rushed in. They stopped when they saw the scene. The human standing rigidly with his back turned. The young woman supported against the wall. A hush fell. The elders arrived soon after. Evan stood before them later, hands at his sides. Armor scratched, heart pounding harder than any battle he had faced. The injured woman stood nearby, now wrapped in proper garments, supported by attendants. Her name was Lariah. The elders spoke in low tones, their skin patterned slow and grave. The translator struggled, then finally spoke clearly. The law has been broken, it said. Evan's stomach sank. I will take responsibility, he said immediately. Whatever that means for my people. I did not know your customs, but I do not deny what happened. Liaria looked at him then. Really looked at him. Most Varellans avoided direct eye contact with humans. Evan did not look threatening, not now. He looked tired, concerned, and honest. She stepped forward, leaning slightly on her injured leg. He turned away, she said. He did not touch me beyond what was needed to carry me. He spoke apology before I spoke fear. The elders listened, but did not soften. The sight itself carries weight, one said. Intent does not erase fate. Evan exhaled slowly. This was not a court he understood. What are the consequences? He asked. Liaria's voice answered before the elders could. There are two, she said. The clearing seemed to hold its breath. By our law, she continued, the one who sees me in such a state must either bind his life to mine in union or face the trial of honor. The translator repeated the words. The meaning hit Evan like a physical blow. Marriage? He said, stunned. Or a trial? The elders nodded. No outsider has survived the trial, one added calmly. Evan felt the weight of 1,000 eyes on him, human and alien alike. His team stood frozen, unable to intervene. Protocol did not cover this. Liara watched his reaction closely. Fear, yes, confusion, but no anger. No attempt to deny what happened. That mattered to her, though she did not yet know why. I never meant to place you in this position, Evan said quietly. I don't believe in taking someone's life or future by force. Not mine, not yours. A murmur spread among the Varellians. Laria's skin shifted to a softer tone, uncertain. The law exists to protect honor, she said, not to punish kindness. The elders considered this. Honor must still be answered, one said. But perhaps not yet decided. The meeting ended without judgment. Evan was escorted back to the human shuttle under watch, his mind spinning. That night, he did not sleep. He kept seeing the moment in the shelter. Not her body, but her eyes, wide with fear, trust given in an instant. Liria lay awake as well, listening to the quiet hum of her world. Her injury would heal. That was not what troubled her. She had been taught that humans were unpredictable, emotionally unstable, dangerous in their freedom. Yet when faced with her most vulnerable moment, the human had turned away. Fate had crossed their paths, and soon it would demand an answer. Morning light spread across the Varellian settlement like a slow breath. The stone growths shimmered softly, their inner lines glowing pale gold as the world woke. For Evan Cole, it felt like waking inside a question he did not know how to answer. He had spent the night inside the human shuttle, sitting upright on a bench, helmet resting at his feet. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same thing, not Laria's unclothed form, but the moment after. Her stillness, the way she had trusted him without knowing who he was. He had faced enemy fire without shaking. This was different. A soft signal echoed through the shuttle, the translator drone activated on its own. Evan Cole, it said gently, you are requested at the Hall of Balance. He stood, muscles stiff, and secured his sidearm without loading it. A choice, not an order. When the shuttle door opened, 2 Varellan guards waited outside. They carried long staffs, ceremonial rather than weapons. They did not bind him. That unsettled him more than chains would have. As they walked, Evan noticed how the settlement had changed since the previous day. More Varellans stood watching. Their skin colors shifted quietly, patterns of curiosity, caution, and something close to awe. News had spread fast. The human who saw Liraya. The human who lived. The Hall of Baumans was not a building, but an open space, carved into a ring of stone grots. Light filtered down from above, casting moving shapes across the ground. Elders stood in a wide circle, their presence heavy and calm. Liraya stood among them. She leaned on a carved support, her injured leg still healing. Her garments were layered and formal now, marked with symbols Evan did not understand. She looked stronger than the day before, but her eyes were searching. Evan stopped at the center of the circle. No one spoke for a long moment. Then the eldest stepped forward. His skin shimmered with deep, steady hues. "Human Evan Cole," the translator said. "You stand between 2 paths." Evan nodded once. "I understand." "You do not yet," the elder replied. "But you will. Until then, you will remain under observation." Evan was escorted away, this time not to the shuttle, but to a small guest chamber grown into the stone. It was simple, clean, guarded. As the door sealed behind him, Evan sat on the floor and let out a slow breath. He had chosen. Now he had to live with it, or not live at all. Across the settlement, Liraya was guided back to her quarters. Attendants moved quietly around her, adjusting supports and offering nourishment she barely noticed. Her thoughts were on the human. She had expected fear from him, or anger, or attempts to bargain. Instead, he had chosen the hardest path without hesitation. Why? She had grown up hearing stories of humans. Loud, emotional, dangerous in unpredictable ways. Yet this one had shown restraint even when no one would have blamed him for taking advantage. That unsettled her more than the law itself. Later, when the settlement dimmed into evening tones, Liraya requested permission to visit Evan. The elders debated, then agreed, with conditions. Evan looked up when the chamber door opened. He stood immediately, hands visible. Liraya entered slowly, leaning on her support. The guards remained outside. They stood in silence for a moment, unsure how to begin.
"I did not expect you to choose the trial,"
she said at last. "I didn't expect to be given 2 impossible options," Evan replied. A faint shift of color crossed her skin. "Amusement, perhaps. You could have chosen union," she said. "Many would. That wouldn't be fair," Evan said, "not if fear is the reason." She studied him carefully. "You believe choice must be free to have meaning." "Yes. That belief is not common among my people," she admitted. They sat opposite each other, a careful distance between them. "What happens in the trial?" Evan asked. Liraya hesitated. "It is not a test of strength," she said. "It measures truth, sacrifice, the willingness to protect others without promise of reward." Evan nodded slowly.
"That sounds
familiar. She watched his face. "You are afraid." "Yes," he said honestly, "but not of dying. I'm afraid of failing what you believe this trial means." Her skin shifted again, softer this time.
"You already changed what it means,"
she said quietly. They spoke long into the artificial night. Their customs, their fears. Evan told her about Earth, about oceans and cities, and the way humans argued loudly, but cared deeply. Liraya spoke of her people's strict traditions and the safety they provided, and the cages they sometimes became. When she finally stood to leave, she paused. "If you survive," she said, "nothing will be the same. For you, or For us. Evan met her gaze. I know. After she left, Evan lay back against the stone wall and stared at the glowing lines above him. For the first time since landing on this world, he did not feel like a stranger. He felt like a choice had already been made. And tomorrow, he would have to prove it. The day of the trial arrived without ceremony. There were no drums, no crowds cheering, no shouting of names. The Varellans believed true honor did not need noise. It only needed witnesses. Evan was escorted from his chamber just after the settlement's light shifted to pale white, the color of judgment. He wore no armor this time, only simple clothing provided by the Varelians, light and flexible. His sidearm was gone. So was his communicator. For the first time in many years, Evan was truly alone. The Hall of Balance was empty when he arrived, but the elders stood waiting at the far end, their skin calm and unreadable. Lyraya was there too, seated slightly behind them. Her leg was stronger now, though she still leaned on her support. She looked worried. The eldest elder stepped forward. The trial of honor is not fought, the translator said. It is lived. You will walk the path of 3 truths. Evan listened carefully. The first truth is fear, the elder continued. The second is sacrifice. The third is choice. You will not be told when one ends and another begins. Evan nodded once. Understood. The elder raised his hand. The stone floor beneath Evan's feet softened, then opened like water. Evan fell, hard. Darkness swallowed him. He hit the ground painfully. Air knocked from his lungs. Rough stone scraped his palms as he pushed himself up. The air was cold and smelled faintly metallic. Light slowly appeared, not from above, but from the walls themselves. He stood inside a vast underground chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. Narrow paths stretched out in several directions. A low sound echoed through the space, not a roar, not a voice, breathing. Evan's heart sped up. Fear. He had faced enemies before. Guns. Explosions. Clear threats. This was different. This fear was quiet and patient. He chose a path and began walking. The further he went, the more the air changed. It grew thicker, heavier, pressing against his chest. The breathing sound grew louder. Then he sighed. A massive creature lay curled in the center of the chamber ahead. Its body looked like stone and flesh fused together. Its eyes were closed, but each breath shook the ground. Evan froze. The creature was wounded. Deep cracks ran along its side, glowing faintly. It was not attacking, it was suffering. As Evan watched, the creature shifted, and part of the ceiling collapsed nearby. If it moved again, the whole chamber could come down. Fear told Evan to turn back. Fear said, "This is not your problem." Then he heard another sound. Crying. Small, weak. Evan's eyes scanned the chamber. Near the far wall, trapped beneath fallen stone, were several small Varellan children. Their skin flickered wildly with panic. They had no weapons, no way out. The creature shifted again, closer to them. Evan did not think anymore. He ran. The ground shook as he sprinted past the creature, stones falling around him. He reached the children and began lifting rocks with bare hands. Pain shot through his arms, but he ignored it. "Move," he urged softly, guiding them away. "Go, now." They hesitated, staring at him in fear and confusion. The creature let out a low, painful sound. Evan turned back. He understood. The creature was not a monster. It was a guardian, wounded while protecting the young. Fear changed shape. Evan grabbed a fallen stone shard and wedged it into the glowing crack along the creature's side, stabilizing it the way he once had with damaged armor plating. The creature stilled, its breathing eased. The children escaped. The chamber brightened. The ground beneath Evan's feet dissolved again. He fell a second time. This time, he landed in shallow water, cold, waist deep. The chamber around him was wide and open, filled with platforms rising above the surface. On the far side, a group of Varellans stood stranded on a collapsing ledge. The water churned violently between them and safety. A voice echoed, not from the elders, but from the world itself. Only one may cross. Evan looked around. There was a narrow bridge forming slowly from the water, unstable and thin. He tested it. It would not hold many. Sacrifice. He stepped onto the bridge and crossed carefully. When he reached the other side, he found a control node, organic and pulsing. It responded to his touch. The ledge with the Varellans stabilized, but the bridge began to dissolve. Evan realized the truth too late. The bridge was built from his own body heat and movement. Each step strengthened it, but only while he remained on it. If he crossed back, the others would fall. If he stayed, the bridge would vanish completely. He stood there, water rising slowly. The Varelians watched him in horror as he understood. He smiled faintly. "Go," he said, though they could not hear him. The water climbed to his chest, then his neck. Darkness crept into his vision. Just before it took him, the water stopped rising. The chamber drained away. Evan collapsed onto solid ground, coughing and gasping. He had no idea how long he lay there. Then came the final fall. This time, there was no dramatic chamber, no creature, no danger. He landed in a quiet space, softly lit. In front of him stood Lyraya. Not injured, not guarded. Just her. "This is the final truth," her voice said, though her lips did not move. "Choice." She looked at him with calm eyes. "You may walk away," she said. "Refuse both paths. Leave this world. No law will bind you." Evan stood slowly, exhausted. "And if I stay?" he asked. "Then your life will change," she said. "Not because of law, because of consequence." He looked at her for a long moment. "I don't believe honor is proven by survival," Evan said. "I believe it's proven by what you protect, even when no one is watching." Lyraya smiled gently. The space dissolved. Evan found himself back in the Hall of Balance, kneeling. The elders stood around him, their skin patterns alive with movement. Lyraya was there too, tears bright in her eyes. The eldest elder spoke. "The trial is complete." Evan lifted his head. "He did not conquer," the elder continued. "He did not dominate. He protected. He yielded. He chose others over himself." The elders bowed. A sound passed through the settlement. Shock, disbelief, awe. Lyraya stepped forward, her voice steady but emotional. "He did not survive the trial," she said. Silence fell.
He changed it. Evan closed his eyes, exhausted beyond words. He had not won.
But he had become something the Varellans had never seen before, and that would change everything. The settlement did not return to normal after the trial. That alone told Evan how deeply things had shifted. He was given a larger chamber, not as a reward, but because Varellan custom no longer allowed him to be confined. Guards stood nearby, but they were ceremonial now, observers, not captors. When Evan walked through the stone-grown paths, Varellans stopped what they were doing to watch him pass, not with fear, with respect. Evan felt uncomfortable with it. He had never liked attention, even on Earth. Medals made him uneasy. Silence had always felt safer. But this was different. This was not admiration for strength. It was recognition of intent. Lyraya walked beside him when the elders allowed it. Her leg had healed enough that she no longer needed support, though she still moved carefully. When she walked with Evan, the settlement grew quieter, as if the world itself was listening. Neither of them spoke much at first. Words felt fragile now. "You changed the meaning of the trial," Lyraya said eventually, her voice low.
"I didn't mean to," Evan replied.
"I just did what felt right. That is why it changed," she said. They stopped near a high ridge overlooking the settlement. From here, Evan could see the flow of Varellan life, children moving in groups, elders in quiet discussion, builders guiding the growth of new stone structures. Everything seemed balanced, deliberate, carefully controlled. "Before you came," Liriah said, "I believed our laws kept us safe. They told us who we were supposed to be." "And now?" Evan asked. "Now I see they also told us who we were not allowed to become." She looked at him then. "You did not ask for power, but you have it." Evan frowned. "I don't want it. That makes it more dangerous," she said softly. The elders requested Evan's presence again before the next cycle ended. This time, the Hall of Balance was full. Not just elders, but witnesses from many circles, representatives, thinkers, record keepers, and humans. Evan's team had been allowed to leave the shuttle and observe from a distance. Their expressions ranged from pride to disbelief to quiet worry. None of them had expected this outcome. The eldest elder spoke first. "The trial was designed to bind or break," the translator said. "Yet you revealed a third path, one our law did not name." Murmurs moved through the hall. "Such change cannot be ignored," the elder continued, "nor can it be embraced without care." Another elder stepped forward. "The law regarding Liriah remains unresolved." Evan stiffened slightly. Liriah moved forward before he could speak. "The law gave me two options," she said clearly. "But the trial revealed a truth greater than law. That honor cannot be claimed through fear." She turned to Evan. "I will not bind him," she said, "unless he chooses freely. And I will not be bound unless I choose freely." Shock rippled through the hall. Evan felt every eye turned to him. He took a breath.
I agree. The elders were silent for a long time. At last, the eldest spoke again.
"Then the law must adapt," he said. "Not be erased, but understood."
A decision was made that day, though it would take time to spread through Virellan society. The forced binding was suspended.
Choice would be required. Evan was no longer a subject of judgment. He was declared a witness of change, a rare title last given generations ago. It carried no authority, only voice. And voices, Evan knew, could shape worlds. Not everyone accepted it. In the cycles that followed, Evan noticed tension beneath the settlement's calm surface. Some Virellans avoided him. Others watched with open distrust. Tradition did not loosen easily, and fear of change ran deep. One evening, as Evan walked alone through a quieter section of the settlement, the air shifted suddenly. The lights dimmed. Movement flickered ahead. He stopped. Figures stepped out from the shadows. 3 Virellans, their skin patterns sharp and dark. "Guardians of the old law, you should not walk alone," one said. "I wasn't told I couldn't," Evan replied calmly. "You were not told you could," another answered. Evan did not reach for a weapon. He had none. "I don't want conflict," he said. "If I've offended—" "This is not offense," the first interrupted. "This is imbalance. You weakened a law that protected us." "I didn't weaken it," Evan said. "I showed it another way to protect."
They moved closer. Liriah's voice cut through the tension.
"Step away from him." She emerged from behind a stone growth, her posture steady, her eyes bright with resolve. Several others followed her, elders, citizens, even some guardians. The 3 backed away slowly, their challenge broken by numbers and authority. But the message was clear. Change had enemies. That night, Evan spoke with Liriah long after the settlement quieted. They sat facing each other, close but not touching. "I never meant to cause division," Evan said. "Division already existed," Liriah replied. "You simply made it visible." She studied him. "If you leave now, things will return to how they were, slowly." "And if I stay?" he asked. "Then change will continue," she said, "with or without resistance." Evan looked down at his hands. Scarred, human, Ordinary. I didn't come here to change your world, he said.
I came to explore.
Liraya smiled faintly. Exploration always changes something. The next cycle brought news from Earth. Human Command requested a full report and recommended Evan's return. Diplomatic tensions were rising. The situation was considered unstable. Evan read the message in silence. Liraya waited. They want me back, he said finally. Her expression did not change, but her skin dimmed slightly. I understand, she said. I haven't answered yet, Evan added. They stood together on the ridge again, watching the settlement below. The wind carried soft sounds of life, of growth. I don't know what the right choice is anymore, Evan admitted. Liara turned to him. Then do not choose for duty. Choose for truth. Evan closed his eyes. He thought of the children in the trial, the wounded guardian, the rising water, the moment where he could have walked away. He opened his eyes. I'll stay, he said, not forever, but long enough to help make this transition peaceful. Not as a ruler, not as a symbol, just... Liara's breath caught. That is more than enough, she said. Their hands touched then, briefly. A simple contact, no law, no ritual, just choice. Far above them, unseen by either world, a quiet signal was sent, recording the moment humanity first chose restraint over advantage, and in doing so, earned something far more lasting than power. The settlement had changed. The soft glow of the stone growth seemed brighter, as if acknowledging the new balance that had emerged. For Evan Cole, each step through the winding paths of the Varellan city reminded him that he was no longer just a visitor. He had become part of something larger, an example of what humans could bring to worlds untouched by their influence: restraint, courage, and choice. The elders called a council, not to judge, but to decide how to recognize the human who had rewritten tradition. The Hall of Balance had never held so many witnesses. Elders from distant districts, teachers of history, guardians, and even young Varellans who had heard the story whispered in awe. They gathered in a circle around Evan, waiting for the final words of the one who had started it all. Liraya. She stepped forward with deliberate calm. The soft rhythm of her breathing matched the gentle pulse of the hall's light. The trial of honor was meant to bind one life or break it. Yet he did neither. He protected what was vulnerable. He saved those in danger. He did not seek control. He chose respect. A murmur passed through the assembly, but Liraya held their attention. Such choices are rare, not only among humans, but even among Varellans. He has given us a new understanding that honor is not only obedience, but courage, wisdom, and empathy. Evan felt the weight of her words. He had faced battles before, seen men fall, made life-and-death decisions in the heat of combat, but nothing had felt like this. Being judged not for strength, but for the quality of his heart. The eldest elder's eyes softened, his skin pulsing with slow gold. Evan Cole, human, you have proven a principle not yet written in our law, that freedom of choice, paired with responsibility, can honor even the oldest traditions. We grant you the title of Bridge of Balance. You will not rule, nor will you be bound. You will guide, speak, and act as a witness to the change your actions began. Evan bowed lightly. Words failed him. He had expected judgment, punishment, perhaps even death. Instead, he was being trusted to represent his own kind, not by command, but by example. Liraya's hand brushed against his arm, a small gesture that spoke more than any decree. She did not command. She offered partnership, respect, and trust. Life settled into a new rhythm. Humans could move freely among the settlement under supervision, and the Varellans grew curious instead of fearful. Children followed Evan at a distance, fascinated by his tall frame and simple gestures. Scholars asked him questions about Earth, about human decision-making, about what drove them to protect others even when no law required it. Evan answered cautiously, always mindful of differences in culture. But he did not speak only for humans. He spoke of principles, fairness, compassion, and respect, principles any species could understand. Liariah accompanied him often, not as a guide, not as a ward, but as a companion in observation and thought. Together they walked the halls of the settlement, discussing plans for better communication between humans and Virellans. Slowly, the trust that had begun with a single act of restraint blossomed into true cooperation. One evening, as the twin suns dipped low on the horizon, Evan found himself on the ridge overlooking the settlement. Liariah joined him silently, her presence comfortable, familiar. "You've done more than survive," she said softly. "You've inspired change that could last generations." Evan shook his head. "I did what anyone would do in my place." "You do not understand," Liariah replied. "Not anyone would have turned away. Not anyone would have risked everything to protect strangers. Not anyone would have chosen truth over law without hesitation. That is what sets humans apart." Evan smiled faintly, humbled. "I never thought of humans as special. Just stubborn." Liariah laughed, a soft, musical sound. "Perhaps that stubbornness is why we must learn from you." The days turned into weeks. Humans set up small observation posts. Scientists and translators worked side by side with Virellan counterparts. And Evan continued his role as bridge of balance, mediating misunderstandings, sharing experiences, and showing that humans could approach a foreign culture without imposing fear. One morning, a young Virellan approached him with trembling hands. "Sir," the child said, "may I ask you something?" "Why do humans care so much about each other?" the child asked. "Even strangers?"
Even when it is dangerous? Evan paused. He had not considered explaining it so simply before.
"Because we understand that every life matters," he said finally, "and that protecting someone does not make us weaker. It makes us stronger." The child nodded slowly, a faint smile crossing her face. Evan realized that the seed of respect, the spark of understanding, was spreading. Weeks later, word came from Earth. They wanted Evan to return, to report, to tell the story of the trial. Human Command was eager to claim the glory of first contact. But Evan had already seen the truth. Earth's interests would be far better served if he stayed, if he acted as a true bridge rather than a representative of power. He told the Virellan Council his decision. "I will remain here," he said, "to help, to learn, to teach if I can. And not as a conqueror, not as a diplomat, but as someone who believes that people, anywhere, can choose to do what is right." The elders conferred briefly, then nodded. Even those who had been skeptical before recognized the wisdom in this choice. Liariah stepped forward and stood by him.
"You are not bound by law," she said.
"But you are bound by trust. That is stronger." And indeed, it was stronger. Time passed. The settlement flourished with new knowledge and understanding. Young Virellans learned human techniques of problem-solving and creative thinking. Humans learned the secrets of their world. The growing stone structures, the subtle communication through light and color, the deep respect for life that extended beyond survival. Evan and Liariah spent long hours together, not in ceremony, not in ritual, but in simple partnership. They walked the stone paths, studied the settlements, and spoke freely of their worlds. The bond between them grew, not forced, not dictated, but chosen. And in that choice, they discovered the truest form of connection, mutual respect, and shared purpose. One evening, as the twin moons rose in pale blue light, Liariah paused atop the ridge. She looked at Evan, her expression calm but resolute. "Do you regret coming here?" Evan shook his head. "Not for a moment."
"I've learned more than I imagined I could."
And in that trust, a new chapter for two worlds had begun. The stars outside the settlement shimmered faintly, as if watching, approving, and waiting for what humanity would choose next. Evan turned to Liariah and smiled. "Whatever comes, We face it together. She nodded. Always together. And in that moment, the story of honor, choice, and courage had found its true beginning. A soft movement passed through the circle. The elder raised a hand, and the air itself seemed to still. The first path, he said, is union, binding your life to Lyraya's. You would remain on this world. You would be claimed as kin. Your people would gain trust beyond measure.
Evan felt the weight of those words.
Marriage, not a symbol, a permanent crossing of worlds. The second path, the elder continued, is the trial of honor. You would stand alone. If you succeed, the law is satisfied. If you fail, the sentence was left unfinished. Evan looked at Lyraya then. She met his gaze without looking away. Her skin shifted, uncertain but calm. I wish to speak, she said. The elders hesitated, then allowed it. Lyraya stepped forward carefully. When I was injured, she said, this human chose my life over his safety. When he realized where he was, he turned away. Not because he was ordered, because he chose respect. A ripple of color moved through the elders. Our law is old, she continued. It was written to protect us from cruelty, not to bind kindness into fear. Evan swallowed. He had not expected her to speak for him. The eldest regarded her closely.
And yet the law stands.
I know, Lyraya replied. That is why I will accept either outcome. Her words surprised even herself. Evan stepped forward slightly. May I speak freely? The elders considered, then nodded.
I am not a king, Evan said. I don't represent my whole species.
I am just a soldier who did what any decent person should do. I will not force marriage on someone who did not choose it freely. If honor must be answered, I will face the trial. A hush fell over the hall. Lyraya's eyes widened. The elders studied Evan with renewed interest.
You would risk death, one said, to preserve her choice?
Yes, Evan answered simply. The decision was made.
The trial will begin at the next cycle? The eldest said. I've seen a world that challenges every assumption I had. And I've met someone I respect more than anyone I've ever known. Her gaze softened. Then our path is clear. We walk it together, not because of law, not because of obligation, but because we choose to. Evan extended his hand. Lyraya took it without hesitation. They stood there, side by side, watching the settlement glow softly in the moonlight. The message spread quietly across the world. Humans could choose restraint. Humans could act with courage, empathy, and honor even when laws and customs demanded otherwise. Word traveled across space, reaching distant Virellan cities and human command alike. But the lesson was not one of power or conquest. It was a lesson of understanding. That true influence comes not from forcing others to follow you, but from living with integrity, showing courage, and choosing wisely when faced with impossible decisions. Evan had crossed a boundary no human had before. He had faced fear, sacrifice, and the weight of choice, and in doing so, had not only survived, but reshaped the understanding of an entire species. And in doing so, he had found a bond unlike any he had known. With Lyraya, with the Virelians, and with the idea that humanity could touch the stars not through domination, but through honor. The settlement slept under the twin moons, a quiet testament to what could be achieved when strength was tempered by compassion, when courage was guided by wisdom, and when choice was given freely and respected. Evan and Lyraya stood together, silent but connected, knowing that the paths ahead would be long, but that they would face them with honesty, trust, and unwavering resolve. The human soldier who had once entered a private shelter by accident had become a legend, not because he conquered, not because he commanded, but because he showed that a human could be trusted to do the right thing, even when no law required it.